The metal prosthetic caught the fluorescent light as Raymond Duval's left arm swept across the hooligan's face. Blood sprayed against the subway tile, and the kid stumbled backward, clutching his broken nose. Around them, commuters froze mid-step, phones already recording. But Raymond wasn't thinking about cameras or consequences. He was staring at the young woman behind him, 19, maybe 20, with dark hair like his daughter Sarah had worn before the accident took her away forever. "Stay down," Raymond said quietly, his voice carrying 30 years of military authority. The kid with the bloody nose looked up at him through watering eyes, seeing past the gray beard and worn jacket to something that had survived 3 tours in Iraq and the kind of loss that breaks most men. The metal hand flexed, servos whirring softly. The second attacker came from the left, swinging wild. Raymond ducked, brought his prosthetic up in a short, brutal arc that connected with ribs. The artificial hand might not feel pain, but it sure knew how to deliver it. The kid dropped, gasping for air. "Jesus Christ," someone whispered from the crowd. A dozen phones captured every second as the 65-year-old veteran stood over 2 would-be muggers, his empty right sleeve pinned neatly to his shoulder. The girl they'd tried to rob was crying, clutching her purse like a lifeline. Raymond turned to her, and his voice gentled. "You okay, miss?" She nodded, tears streaming. Polish accent when she spoke. "Thank you. Thank you so much." "You reminded me of someone," he said simply. Transit police arrived within minutes, led by a grizzled sergeant who looked like he'd seen everything twice. The witnesses were eager to talk, phones thrust forward with video evidence. The Polish girl, who gave her name as Anya Kowalski, showed them her torn bag strap where the first kid had grabbed it. "These two know you?" the sergeant asked Raymond. "Never seen them before today." "Unprovoked assault after attempted robbery?" That's how it looked to me. The sergeant cuffed both attackers, who were still groaning about their injuries. "Lucky for them you showed restraint, Pops. Could have been a lot worse." Raymond almost smiled. If this was restraint, these kids had no idea what worse looked like. In Fallujah, worse meant stepping on an IED while trying to save your squad. Worse meant waking up in a field hospital missing an arm, but knowing your boys were alive because of what you lost. Worse meant coming home to a VA system that treated him like a number on a form instead of a man who'd left pieces of himself in the desert. He remembered those first months after the explosion, the phantom pain that woke him screaming at 3 a.m. The simple tasks that became impossible, opening a jar, tying his shoes, holding his daughter Sarah when she cried. She was only 8 then, and she'd try to help him with everything, her small hands patient where his frustration ran hot. "It's okay, Daddy," she'd say when he'd curse at a stubborn button or a dropped fork. "You're still my hero." That was before the drunk driver took her from him 3 years later. Before the grief and the booze, and the slow slide into the kind of isolation that kills men quietly, one lonely day at a time. Anya insisted on walking with him to street level. She was a student at New York University, working 2 jobs to afford school. The bag they'd tried to steal contained her laptop with an entire semester's worth of work. Her English was careful, precise, each word chosen deliberately. "My father was soldier too," she said as they climbed the stairs. "In Poland Army. He served in Iraq also with American forces. He would like you very much." "I'm not a hero, kid. Just a grumpy old man who doesn't like bullies." "Hero or not, you saved my education. Everything I worked for was in that bag. My thesis research, my job applications, photos of my family back home." Her voice caught slightly. "In Poland, my father, he tells stories about American soldiers. Says they were good men who looked out for people. Raymond felt something twist in his chest. Your dad still around? He died 2 years ago. Cancer. From chemicals, maybe, during the war. Government says not connected, but... She shrugged with the bitter wisdom of someone who'd learned not to trust official explanations. At street level, she pressed a business card into his prosthetic hand. Coffee shop on the Upper West Side where she worked weekends. The card was worn around the edges, like she'd been carrying it for months. Please, let me buy you coffee sometime, is least I can do. Raymond pocketed the card, knowing he'd probably throw it away later. Getting attached to people hurt too much when you inevitably lost them. Like he'd lost Sarah to a drunk driver 3 years after losing his arm to an insurgent's bomb. The video was online within hours. Disabled vet stops subway robbery, trending across social media. Raymond's phone rang constantly, reporters wanting interviews, veterans organizations offering support, even a few movie producers talking about options and rights. He ignored them all, unplugging his landline and turning off his cell. What he couldn't ignore was the knock at his apartment door that evening. He opened it to find a man in his 50s wearing a crisp VFW jacket, face familiar despite the years. Ray Duval? Tom Morrison. I was Lieutenant Morrison when you saved my squad in Fallujah. Raymond stared. His old platoon leader looked older, grayer, but the voice was unmistakable. Tom? What the hell are you doing here? Saw the video. Figured it was time we had a conversation. They sat in Raymond's cramped kitchen, drinking beer and filling in 15 years. Tom had made colonel before retiring, now worked for a veterans advocacy group in Washington. He talked about the men from their old unit. Martinez was a doctor now, had 3 kids. Rodriguez ran a construction company in Texas. Williams taught high school in Detroit. All of them doing well, all of them moving forward with their lives. What about you, Ray? What have you been doing all these years? Raymond gestured around the small apartment. 1 bedroom, sparse furniture, walls bare except for a single photograph of Sarah on the kitchen table. This and that. Disability keeps the lights on. That's it? Jesus, Ray, you got more medals than most generals. Bronze Star, Purple Heart, 2 Silver Stars. You could be doing speaking tours, consulting work, anything. Don't want the attention. Tom studied him with the same intensity he'd used to read terrain maps in Iraq. This is about Sarah, isn't it? You're still blaming yourself. Raymond's jaw tightened. Drunk driver hit her, not me. But you think if you'd been there instead of at that VA appointment? Drop it, Tom. She was 8 years old, Ray. Nothing you could have done would have changed what happened. But sitting in this apartment for 15 years, that's not honoring her memory. That's just slow suicide. You know why I really came? Tom said eventually. That video reminded me of something. You're still the same guy who threw himself on an IED to save strangers? Still fighting for people? I'm not fighting anybody. Just minded my business until those punks... Bullshit, Ray. You could have walked away like everyone else on that platform, but you didn't. Same as you didn't walk away in Iraq. Tom pulled out a manila folder. There's a program I want you to know about. Experimental prosthetics for combat vets. Neural interface technology, full sensation feedback. They've been trying to reach you for months. Raymond looked down at his mechanical hand. Reliable, functional, but essentially dead. No feeling, no feedback. Just a sophisticated tool attached to his stump with titanium pins and artificial tendons. Why me? Because you still give a damn. Most guys lose a limb, they fade away. You're still out there protecting people. 3 weeks later, Raymond found himself at Walter Reed Army Medical Center, staring at something that looked like science fiction. Dr. Sarah Chen, the name hit him like a punch, same as his daughter's, was brilliant, passionate about her work, maybe 35 years old. The neural interface connects directly to your existing nerve pathways, she explained, holding up the prototype prosthetic. You'll feel texture, temperature, pressure. Not perfect, but remarkably close to natural sensation. How close? She smiled. Close enough to feel someone's handshake. Close enough to know if you're holding something fragile. The surgery took 8 hours. Recovery was 3 weeks of pain and physical therapy that reminded him why he'd hated hospitals since losing his arm. The staff was professional but overworked, rushing between patients with barely time for conversation. But Dr. Chen checked on him personally every day, adjusting settings on the neural interface, fine-tuning the connection between his brain and the artificial limb. "How's the phantom pain?" she asked during one of her visits. "Better. The new signals seem to be crowding out the old ones." "That's common. Your brain is learning to trust the prosthetic. It's not just a tool anymore. It's becoming part of you." Learning to use the new hand took another month of frustration and small victories. The sensation was incredible, but overwhelming. After 15 years of numbness, suddenly being able to feel texture and temperature again was like recovering from blindness. He spent hours just touching things: the rough surface of his kitchen table, the smooth glass of a window, the soft fabric of Sarah's old stuffed animal that he'd kept in a closet for years. But the first time Raymond felt raindrops on artificial fingertips, standing on his fire escape during a spring storm, he understood why Tom had pushed him into this program. The prosthetic wasn't just giving him back his hand. It was giving him back the ability to connect with the world. The sensation was overwhelming initially. 15 years of numbness. Then suddenly he could feel everything again. The texture of fabric, the temperature of his coffee cup, the vibration of his phone when it rang. Sometimes he just sat at his kitchen table, running his fingers over different objects, marveling at feedback his brain had learned to live without. 2 months after the surgery, he walked into the coffee shop where Anya worked. The place was busier than he'd expected. Students with laptops, business people grabbing quick caffeine fixes, the kind of Manhattan energy that had always made him uncomfortable. But Anya spotted him immediately, waved from behind the counter where she was operating an expensive espresso machine with practiced efficiency. "Mr. Raymond, how is the new hand?" He flexed his fingers, felt the warm ceramic of the cup she handed him. Neural pathways that had been severed for 15 years were alive again, sending signals his brain was still learning to interpret. The coffee was perfect, dark, strong, with just a hint of sweetness that reminded him of the Turkish coffee he'd tasted once in Baghdad. Getting used to it, still learning what I can and can't do. "You seem different, happier maybe?" She was probably right. For years after losing his arm and his daughter, he'd been numb in more ways than one, protecting himself by not caring too much, not getting too close to anyone. The apartment had become a fortress, silence his only companion. But sitting in this busy coffee shop, watching this determined young woman build her American dream one customer at a time, Raymond realized numbness wasn't protection. It was just another kind of death. "Tell me about your family," he said, "back in Poland." Her face lit up. She told him about her mother, who worked as a nurse in Krakow, about her younger brother, who was studying engineering and dreamed of building bridges, about her father, who'd served alongside American forces near Fallujah, and always spoke of the courage he'd seen there. He would talk about this one American sergeant, she said, cleaning the espresso machine as she spoke. Man who threw himself on bomb to save his squad, lost his arm but saved 5 lives. My father, he said that sergeant was what America meant to him, someone who would sacrifice for strangers. Raymond's hand froze halfway to his cup. What was your father's name? Stefan Kowalski? Why? The name hit him like a physical blow. Stefan Kowalski had been the Polish liaison attached to their unit for 6 months. Good soldier, spoke perfect English, had probably saved more American lives than any foreign national Raymond had ever served with. He'd been there the day of the IED attack, had helped carry Raymond to the medevac helicopter. Your father, Raymond said carefully. He was about 35, dark hair, scar on his left cheek from shrapnel. Anya stared at him. Yes, how did you? I'm the sergeant he told you about. He helped save my life that day. The call came 3 months later on a Tuesday evening. Anya's voice was shaky, frightened. Mr. Raymond? They came back. The boys from Subway. They found where I work. Raymond was already reaching for his jacket. Where are you now? In the coffee shop, but they are outside, in the alley. I was taking out trash when I saw them. They have friends this time. Stay inside. Lock the doors. I'm coming. He found them in the narrow alley behind the shop. 4 kids this time, the original 2 plus a couple of friends who looked like they'd been recruited from the same street corner gene pool. They'd grown since their last encounter, gotten bigger and angrier. One had a neck tattoo that looked like it had been done with a ballpoint pen and poor judgment. Anya was visible through the back window, phone pressed to her ear, face pale with fear. Well, well, the first kid said, the one whose nose Raymond had broken. It had healed crooked, giving him a permanent sneer. Look who decided to show up. Grandpa with his robot arm. This doesn't involve the girl? Raymond said calmly, positioning himself between them and the back door. You want to settle something with me? Fine. But leave her out of it. Nah, old man. See, you embarrassed us. Made us look like punks in front of the whole internet. Got us kicked out of school, lost our jobs. Now we return the favor. Raymond noticed they'd been working out since their last encounter. Prison muscles, probably. The kind of desperate strength that came from having nothing left to lose. But muscle without discipline was just meat. And these kids had never learned the difference between fighting and surviving. The leader pulled a knife. Nothing fancy, just a 4-inch blade, but sharp enough to kill. Raymond calculated angles and distances, muscle memory from decades of training clicking into place. His new prosthetic hand could feel the weight of his keys between artificial fingers. Last chance to walk away, Raymond said. The kid with the knife lunged forward. Raymond sidestepped, brought his prosthetic up in a precise arc that connected with the wrist holding the weapon. Through his neural interface, he felt bones break, sensation so vivid it was almost startling after years of hitting things with dead metal. The knife clattered to the pavement. The second attacker came low, trying to tackle him. Raymond drove his knee upward, felt cartilage crunch against his kneecap. The third kid took a swing at his head. Raymond caught the fist in his prosthetic hand and squeezed until he heard small bones pop. The fourth one looked at his friends writhing on the ground and decided he had somewhere else to be. Call 911, Raymond told Anya through the window. Then he looked down at the 3 kids. Next time you see me coming, cross the street. The police arrived and sorted everything out. Security cameras had captured the whole incident, showing Raymond being attacked and defending himself. The kids were arrested for assault, carrying weapons, and violating parole from their previous subway incident. Later, sitting in the coffee shop after it reopened, Anya brought him coffee with shaking hands. "Your new hand," she said quietly. "You really felt it when you hit them, didn't you?" Raymond flexed his prosthetic fingers, looking at scraped knuckles that transmitted sensation through quantum processors and neural interfaces. "Yeah, I felt all of it." "Does it hurt?" "Sometimes. But feeling pain is better than feeling nothing at all." 6 months later, Dr. Chen called with a proposition. The prosthetic program was expanding, and they needed success stories to convince other amputee veterans to try the experimental technology. Would Raymond be willing to speak at veterans' hospitals, share his experience? He was thinking about it seriously. Having purpose felt good again. The coffee shop had become his regular spot. Anya had recommended him to other students, the veteran who helped people, good listener, safe place to sit when the city felt too dangerous. Word spread through the immigrant community that there was an old soldier who looked out for people. His phone buzzed with a text from Tom Morrison. "New Marine needs someone to talk to. Lost both legs in Afghanistan. Says he's done fighting. Thought you might have something to say about that." Raymond smiled, felt the phone's smooth surface through artificial fingertips. After 15 years of numbness in more ways than one, sensation was still a daily miracle. "Send me his number," he texted back with his prosthetic hand. "I'll call him tonight." The reporter found him the next week at his usual table. Young woman with a notebook and serious eyes, probably fresh out of journalism school. "Mr. Duval, I'm writing a story about veterans who continue serving their communities. Could I ask you a few questions?" Raymond considered this. Media attention usually meant trouble, but maybe some stories were worth telling. "What would you say to other veterans who feel like their service doesn't matter anymore?" she asked. Raymond thought about the subway platform, the alley behind the coffee shop, the phone calls from Marines and soldiers who'd lost pieces of themselves in foreign wars. He thought about a prosthetic hand that let him feel the world again, and a Polish girl who'd reminded him that some things were still worth protecting. "I'd tell them service doesn't end when you take off the uniform. Sometimes it just finds a different battlefield." He flexed his artificial fingers, felt sensation flow through neural pathways science had rebuilt. "And sometimes you need to lose something before you can really understand what you're fighting for." The reporter scribbled notes, asked about the prosthetic program and whether he planned to continue his advocacy work. Raymond answered her questions, but kept watching the door, the windows, the people around them. Old habits from Iraq, but useful habits in New York, too. As she prepared to leave, the reporter asked one final question. "What's next for you, Mr. Duval?" Raymond looked across the coffee shop at Anya, who was training a new employee behind the counter. She caught his eye and smiled, the same smile that had thanked him for not walking away when she needed help. "Next," he said, testing the grip strength of his prosthetic hand. "Next, I keep my eyes open. Someone might need help." And he walked away.